Question 1. Performance analysis shows that a sales associate consistently exceeds their monthly targets by recommending investment products that, while meeting the minimum regulatory disclosure requirements, may not be the most suitable long-term options for all clients, particularly those with a low risk tolerance. The associate's justification is that these products offer higher commission rates, directly contributing to their performance metrics. Which of the following represents the most appropriate professional response to this situation? Option A. The sales associate should be coached to understand the importance of aligning product recommendations with a thorough assessment of individual client needs and risk profiles, even if it means adjusting sales strategies to prioritize suitability over immediate target achievement. Option B. The sales associate should be commended for their strong performance, with a reminder to ensure all required disclosures are made, as this meets the minimum regulatory standard. Option C. The sales associate's sales targets should be reviewed and potentially lowered to reduce the pressure that may be leading to suboptimal client recommendations. Option D. The sales associate should be instructed to continue their current sales approach, as long as all product documentation is technically compliant with regulatory disclosure requirements. Correct answer is B. The sales associate should be commended for their strong performance, with a reminder to ensure all required disclosures are made, as this meets the minimum regulatory standard. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate performance pressures with long-term ethical considerations and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet sales targets can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay potential risks to customers, creating a conflict between personal gain and professional duty. Careful judgment is required to ensure that customer interests are prioritized, even when it might impact short-term performance metrics. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it adheres to the fundamental ethical principle of putting the customer's best interests first, which is often enshrined in regulatory frameworks governing financial advice and sales practices. This approach demonstrates integrity and builds trust, which are essential for sustainable business success. It aligns with the spirit of regulations that aim to protect consumers from unsuitable products or advice, ensuring that sales are driven by genuine customer needs rather than aggressive targets. An incorrect approach that prioritizes sales targets over customer suitability fails to uphold regulatory obligations. For instance, if the relevant jurisdiction has regulations requiring advisors to conduct a thorough needs assessment and recommend only suitable products, pushing an unsuitable product to meet a target would constitute a breach of these regulations. This could lead to significant penalties, reputational damage, and harm to the customer. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the immediate transaction without considering future customer satisfaction or potential complaints, ignores the broader ethical responsibility and the long-term consequences of poor customer outcomes, which can also be implicitly or explicitly covered by consumer protection laws. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core ethical and regulatory obligations. This involves understanding the why behind the rules to protect customers and maintain market integrity. When faced with conflicting pressures, such as sales targets versus customer needs, the framework should guide the professional to pause, assess the potential impact on the customer, and consult relevant policies and compliance guidelines. If uncertainty remains, seeking advice from a supervisor or compliance department is a critical step. This proactive and principled approach ensures that decisions are not only compliant, but also ethically sound, fostering a culture of responsibility and customer centricity. Question 2. The audit findings indicate a pattern of customer complaints regarding the upselling of additional services during the checkout process, with some customers feeling pressured into purchases they did not fully understand. As a sales associate, you are aware of the store's sales targets and the incentives tied to them. How should you proceed? Option A. Continue with current sales practices, focusing on meeting individual sales targets, and assume that the customer complaints are isolated incidents not reflective of a systemic issue. Option B. Discuss the audit findings with colleagues and collectively decide on minor adjustments to sales pitches without formal reporting to address the complaints. Option C. Immediately report the audit findings and your concerns to your store manager and the relevant internal compliance department, requesting guidance on how to address the customer feedback while adhering to company policy and ethical sales practices. Option D. Discreetly adjust your upselling techniques to be less direct, without informing management, hoping this will reduce complaints without impacting sales performance. The correct answer is C. Immediately report the audit findings and your concerns to your store manager and the relevant internal compliance department, requesting guidance on how to address the customer feedback while adhering to company policy and ethical sales practices. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term ethical and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet sales targets can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to decisions that prioritize short-term gains over customer well-being and adherence to H&M's internal policies and relevant consumer protection laws. Careful judgment is required to navigate this conflict without compromising integrity. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, objective investigation and adherence to established procedures. This aligns with H&M's commitment to ethical conduct and customer trust, as well as regulatory expectations for fair and transparent sales practices. By escalating the issue and seeking guidance, the employee demonstrates a commitment to resolving the problem responsibly and in accordance with company policy and legal frameworks. This proactive stance prevents potential harm to customers and protects the company from reputational damage and regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring the findings or attempting to resolve them without proper escalation is professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a disregard for internal controls and ethical standards. Such actions could lead to continued customer dissatisfaction, potential breaches of consumer protection regulations, e.g., misleading advertising or unfair sales tactics, and a failure to uphold H&M's values. Another incorrect approach, such as making assumptions without verifying facts, can result in misdiagnosing the problem and implementing an ineffective solution, further exacerbating the situation and potentially leading to disciplinary action. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework when faced with such situations. This typically involves 1. Identifying the problem and its potential impact. 2. Gathering all relevant facts objectively. 3. Consulting company policies and relevant regulations. 4. Evaluating potential courses of action against ethical principles and policy requirements. 5. Seeking guidance from supervisors or relevant departments when uncertainty exists. 6. Implementing the chosen course of action and monitoring its effectiveness. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with professional responsibilities. Question 3. Analysis of a situation where a customer is dissatisfied with a product and demands an immediate refund, citing a minor defect. The employee has the authority to offer a small discount but not a full refund without managerial approval. The customer is becoming increasingly agitated. Which approach best reflects a professional decision-making framework in this context? Option A. Promise the customer a full refund and a replacement product, even though this exceeds your authorized limits, to ensure they leave satisfied. Option B. Politely explain the company policy regarding refunds and offer the authorized discount, while also offering to escalate the issue to a manager for further review. Option C. Immediately offer a full refund to de-escalate the situation, as customer satisfaction is paramount. Option D. Tell the customer that the defect is not significant enough to warrant any compensation, and that they should have been more careful. The correct answer is C. Immediately offer a full refund to de-escalate the situation, as customer satisfaction is paramount. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance competing priorities, adhering to company policy, fulfilling customer expectations, and maintaining ethical conduct. The pressure to resolve a customer complaint quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise integrity or violate established procedures. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen course of action is both effective and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing a thorough understanding of the situation before making a decision. This involves gathering all relevant facts, consulting applicable company policies and guidelines, and considering the potential impact of different actions. This aligns with the H&M hiring assessment test's emphasis on a structured decision-making framework, which encourages a systematic and evidence-based approach to problem solving. It ensures that decisions are not made impulsively, but are grounded in a comprehensive assessment, thereby minimizing risks and upholding ethical standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately offering a significant discount without fully investigating the customer's claim. This fails to adhere to company policy regarding the authorization of discounts and could set a precedent for fraudulent claims. It bypasses the established decision-making framework by not gathering sufficient information. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the customer's complaint outright without proper investigation. This demonstrates a lack of empathy in customer service, potentially damaging the company's reputation. Ethically, it fails to address a customer's concern in good faith and may violate implicit service standards. A third incorrect approach is to promise a resolution that cannot be guaranteed or that falls outside of company policy. This is a failure of honesty and transparency. It misleads the customer and creates an expectation that cannot be met, leading to further dissatisfaction and potential breaches of trust. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that typically involves 1. Identifying the problem or situation. 2. Gathering relevant information and facts. 3. Identifying stakeholders and their perspectives. 4. Evaluating potential courses of action against company policies, ethical principles, and potential consequences. 5. Selecting the best course of action. 6. Implementing the decision. 7. Reviewing the outcome. This systematic process ensures that decisions are well considered, justifiable, and aligned with professional standards. Question 4. The performance metrics show a significant dip in sales for a particular product category in the last quarter, coinciding with a slight increase in customer complaints regarding product availability. The regional sales manager is pushing for an immediate, aggressive discount strategy to boost sales figures before the end-of-year review. What is the most appropriate decision-making approach in this situation? Option A. Immediately implement a significant across-the-board discount on the affected product category to clear inventory and drive short-term sales, as requested by the regional sales manager. Option B. Focus solely on the sales figures and implement a promotional campaign that highlights price reductions without investigating the customer complaints or the underlying reasons for the sales decline. Option C. Rely on the regional sales manager's experience and implement their proposed discount strategy without further investigation, assuming they have a clear understanding of the market dynamics. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive review involving the merchandising, supply chain, and marketing teams to understand the root cause of both the sales dip and the increased complaints, and then develop a targeted strategy based on these findings. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive review involving the merchandising, supply chain, and marketing teams to understand the root cause of both the sales dip and the increased complaints, and then develop a targeted strategy based on these findings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term strategic goals, all while adhering to H&M's internal decision-making frameworks and ethical guidelines. The pressure to meet short-term sales targets can create a temptation to overlook potential future implications or to prioritize easily quantifiable results over more complex, qualitative improvements. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are not only effective in the short term, but also sustainable and aligned with H&M's values and strategic direction. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a structured, multifaceted evaluation that considers both quantitative performance data and qualitative factors. This aligns with a robust decision-making framework that emphasizes thorough analysis, stakeholder consideration, and alignment with overarching business objectives. By seeking input from relevant departments and considering the broader impact on customer experience and brand reputation, this approach ensures a more holistic and informed decision, minimizing the risk of unintended negative consequences and fostering a culture of responsible business conduct. This is consistent with ethical principles of due diligence and responsible management. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate sales figures without considering the underlying causes or potential customer dissatisfaction represents a failure to conduct adequate due diligence. This could lead to short-term gains at the expense of long-term customer loyalty and brand image, potentially violating ethical obligations to provide a positive customer experience. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes a quick fix without understanding the root cause of the performance dip demonstrates a lack of analytical rigor. This can lead to recurring issues and wasted resources, failing to address the fundamental problems, and thus not acting in the best interest of the company's sustained success. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal bias, rather than objective data and structured analysis, is professionally unacceptable, as it introduces subjectivity and increases the likelihood of poor decision-making, potentially leading to reputational damage or operational inefficiencies. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the problem or opportunity. This involves gathering relevant data, both quantitative and qualitative. Next, they should identify and evaluate potential solutions, considering their feasibility, impact, and alignment with strategic goals. This stage should involve seeking diverse perspectives from relevant stakeholders. Finally, the chosen solution should be implemented, monitored, and evaluated for its effectiveness, with a willingness to adapt if necessary. This iterative process ensures that decisions are well considered, robust, and contribute to the overall success of the organization. Question 5. The assessment process reveals that H&M is considering the introduction of a new sustainable sourcing initiative for a key product line. The internal team responsible for the impact assessment has presented several potential approaches to evaluating the initiative's consequences before full implementation. Which approach best aligns with a responsible and compliant business strategy? Option A. Focus primarily on the immediate operational efficiencies gained by streamlining existing supplier relationships, assuming that any broader implications will be addressed reactively if they arise. Option B. Conduct a thorough evaluation of the initiative's potential environmental, social, and economic impacts, engaging with suppliers, industry experts, and relevant non-governmental organizations to gather diverse perspectives and identify potential risks and benefits. Option C. Prioritize a detailed analysis of the projected cost savings and revenue increases associated with the new sourcing, with minimal consideration for potential supply chain disruptions or changes in consumer perception. Option D. Undertake a superficial review of publicly available sustainability reports from competitors to benchmark potential impacts, without conducting any primary research or stakeholder consultation. The correct answer is C. Prioritize a detailed analysis of the projected cost savings and revenue increases associated with the new sourcing, with minimal consideration for potential supply chain disruptions or changes in consumer perception. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a scenario where a new product launch is being considered, and the impact assessment phase is crucial for understanding potential consequences. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a forward-looking perspective, balancing potential benefits against potential risks, and ensuring compliance with relevant regulations. The judgment required stems from the need to anticipate unforeseen issues and to make informed recommendations that protect both the company and its stakeholders. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a comprehensive and systematic evaluation of all potential impacts, both positive and negative, across various dimensions. This includes considering financial, operational, reputational, and regulatory implications. By engaging with relevant stakeholders, gathering data, and analyzing potential risks and benefits thoroughly, the company can make a more informed decision. This aligns with the principles of responsible business conduct and proactive risk management, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory frameworks that aim to ensure market stability and consumer protection. A thorough impact assessment helps to identify potential compliance gaps or areas where new policies might be needed, thereby preventing future regulatory breaches. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate financial gains without considering broader implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for potential negative externalities, such as environmental damage, social disruption, or reputational harm, which can lead to significant regulatory penalties, legal challenges, and long-term damage to the brand. Another incorrect approach that neglects to consult with relevant internal departments or external stakeholders is also flawed. This oversight can lead to incomplete data, missed risks, and a lack of buy-in, making the implementation of the product launch more difficult and potentially exposing the company to unforeseen operational or legal issues. Furthermore, an approach that dismisses potential regulatory concerns without proper investigation is a direct ethical and regulatory failure, as it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a willingness to operate outside established legal boundaries. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the scope and objectives of the impact assessment. Second, identify all relevant stakeholders and ensure their perspectives are considered. Third, gather comprehensive data from reliable sources. Fourth, analyze the data to identify potential impacts, risks, and opportunities. Fifth, develop mitigation strategies for identified risks and plans to capitalize on opportunities. Finally, document the entire process and its findings, and use this information to inform the final decision and subsequent actions. This systematic process ensures that all critical factors are considered, leading to more robust and defensible decisions. Question 6. Research into the potential impact of introducing a new sustainable fashion line in a European Union member state. What would be the most prudent approach for H&M to ensure compliance with EU consumer protection laws regarding green claims and product origin transparency? Option A. Proceed with the launch, addressing any potential consumer complaints on a case-by-case basis after the product line is available in stores. Option B. Focus primarily on the aesthetic appeal and price point of the new line, with minimal attention to the specific regulatory requirements for green claims and origin. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the EU's Green Claims Directive and relevant national legislation in the target member state, seeking advice from legal experts specializing in consumer law and sustainability regulations, and developing clear, verifiable substantiation for all environmental claims. Option D. Rely on existing marketing materials and general sustainability certifications, assuming that the EU's overarching environmental goals will cover the new product line. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the EU's Green Claims Directive and relevant national legislation in the target member state, seeking advice from legal experts specializing in consumer law and sustainability regulations, and developing clear, verifiable substantiation for all environmental claims. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire to expand its market reach and the stringent regulatory requirements designed to protect consumers and ensure fair competition. Navigating these regulations requires a deep understanding of the specific legal framework governing H&M's operations in its target markets, as well as a commitment to ethical business practices. The core difficulty lies in balancing commercial objectives with legal compliance and ethical considerations, especially when introducing new products or services that may have unforeseen impacts. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes thorough due diligence and proactive engagement with regulatory bodies. This demonstrates a commitment to operating within the legal boundaries and ethical standards expected of a responsible multinational corporation. By seeking expert legal counsel and conducting comprehensive market research, H&M can identify potential regulatory hurdles and develop strategies to mitigate risks before launching new initiatives. This approach aligns with the principles of responsible business conduct, consumer protection, and market integrity, all of which are foundational to sustainable growth and maintaining public trust. An incorrect approach that involves launching a new product line without fully understanding the local advertising regulations would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to misleading consumers, unfair competitive practices, and substantial fines or legal action. Another incorrect approach, such as assuming existing marketing strategies will be universally applicable without local adaptation, risks violating local consumer protection laws that may mandate specific disclosures or prohibit certain types of promotional content. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the legal nuances of different markets, potentially harming H&M's brand reputation and leading to financial penalties. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on rapid market entry without considering the ethical implications of product placement or pricing in relation to local socio-economic conditions, could be seen as exploitative and damaging to the company's social license to operate. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying the objective and the proposed course of action. Next, potential regulatory, legal, and ethical risks associated with the action must be identified. This involves consulting with legal experts specializing in the relevant jurisdictions and conducting thorough market research. Once risks are identified, their likelihood and potential impact should be assessed. Strategies to mitigate or avoid these risks should then be developed and evaluated. Finally, the chosen course of action should be implemented with ongoing monitoring and a willingness to adapt if new information or challenges arise. This iterative process ensures that business decisions are not only commercially viable, but also legally compliant and ethically sound. Question 7. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of customer dissatisfaction and a high potential impact on brand reputation if the new sustainable fabric used in the upcoming collection is not clearly communicated as requiring specific care instructions to prevent shrinkage. This could lead to customers experiencing damaged garments shortly after purchase. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the H&M merchandising team responsible for this launch? Option A. Immediately halt the launch of the affected product line and initiate a thorough review of the product labeling and marketing materials to ensure clear and prominent communication of the specific care instructions before proceeding. Option B. Document the risk in a report and defer any decision on revised labeling or launch postponement until after the initial sales period to gauge customer feedback. Option C. Proceed with the launch as planned, assuming customers will naturally discover the care instructions or that the impact will be minimal. Option D. Inform the marketing department to subtly adjust online product descriptions to mention care instructions, but proceed with the physical product launch to meet sales targets. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the launch as planned, assuming customers will naturally discover the care instructions or that the impact will be minimal. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations where a new product launch, intended to boost sales, inadvertently creates a significant compliance risk. The professional challenge lies in balancing commercial objectives with the imperative to adhere to H&M's internal policies and relevant consumer protection regulations. The pressure to meet sales targets can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay potential risks, making objective assessment and decisive action crucial. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing compliance and customer well-being over immediate sales gains. It involves a proactive and systematic response to identified risks. This aligns with H&M's commitment to responsible business practices and consumer safety, which are often underpinned by regulatory frameworks requiring accurate product information and safe goods. By initiating an immediate review and pausing the launch, the individual is acting in accordance with principles of due diligence and risk mitigation, preventing potential harm to customers and reputational damage to the company. This also reflects a commitment to ethical conduct, ensuring that H&M's products are not only desirable, but also safe and accurately represented. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the launch while acknowledging the potential issues. This is a direct violation of risk management principles and potentially consumer protection laws that mandate product safety and accurate labeling. It prioritizes short-term sales over long-term customer trust and legal compliance, exposing H&M to significant fines, product recalls, and severe reputational damage. Ethically, it is unacceptable to knowingly put customers at risk. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the concerns as minor and proceed without further investigation. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to understand the potential severity of the identified risks. Regulatory bodies often have strict guidelines regarding product safety and information disclosure, and even seemingly minor issues can have significant legal and ethical ramifications. This approach shows a disregard for H&M's internal policies and a failure to uphold professional responsibility. A third incorrect approach is to delay addressing the issue until after the launch, hoping it will not be noticed. This is a deliberate attempt to circumvent established procedures and is a serious ethical lapse. It indicates a lack of integrity and a willingness to engage in potentially fraudulent practices. Such behavior erodes trust within the organization and with customers, and can lead to severe disciplinary action and legal consequences. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured decision-making process. First, they must objectively assess the identified risks against H&M's internal policies and relevant regulations. Second, they should consult with relevant departments, such as legal, compliance, and product development, to gain a comprehensive understanding of the implications. Third, they must prioritize the safety and well-being of customers and the integrity of the brand above immediate commercial pressures. Finally, they should document their assessment and decision-making process thoroughly to ensure accountability and transparency. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and compliant. Question 8. Governance review demonstrates that a significant portion of H&M's garment production relies on suppliers in regions where labor costs are rapidly increasing, impacting profit margins. The review highlights the need for cost optimization. A proposal is put forward to shift production to new suppliers in a different region known for lower labor costs, with less stringent oversight on labor practices. However, this region has a history of documented labor rights issues. What is the most responsible and ethically sound approach for H&M to address the cost pressures while upholding its commitment to responsible sourcing and ethical labor practices? Option A. Immediately transfer a substantial portion of production to the new region to capitalize on lower labor costs and improve profit margins, assuming that the new suppliers will eventually align with H&M standards. Option B. Prioritize cost reduction by selecting the cheapest available suppliers in the new region, with a plan to address any labor issues only if they become publicly visible or legally problematic. Option C. Conduct thorough due diligence on potential new suppliers in the lower-cost region, focusing on their adherence to H&M's Code of Conduct and international labor standards, and engage in dialogue to address any identified gaps before considering a shift in production. Option D. Negotiate aggressively with existing suppliers to reduce their prices, even if it means putting them under significant financial strain, to maintain current production locations and avoid the complexities of new supplier onboarding. The correct answer is C. Conduct thorough due diligence on potential new suppliers in the lower-cost region, focusing on their adherence to H&M's Code of Conduct and international labor standards, and engage in dialogue to address any identified gaps before considering a shift in production. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost reduction with the long-term implications for brand reputation and ethical sourcing, all within the context of H&M's commitment to responsible business practices. The decision-maker must navigate potential conflicts between financial targets and the company's stated values, demanding careful judgment and a thorough understanding of the regulatory and ethical landscape. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive, data-driven assessment that considers all relevant factors, including supplier audits, worker welfare, and potential reputational damage. This aligns with H&M's stated commitment to sustainability and ethical sourcing, which are increasingly important to consumers and investors. By engaging with suppliers and seeking collaborative solutions, the company demonstrates a commitment to responsible business conduct, which is often implicitly or explicitly supported by industry best practices and evolving regulatory expectations around supply chain due diligence. This proactive and ethical stance mitigates risks and reinforces brand integrity. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost savings without considering the ethical implications of supplier practices would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to violations of labor laws in sourcing countries, damage to H&M's reputation, and potential legal repercussions if it is found that the company did not exercise due diligence in its supply chain. Another incorrect approach that involves abruptly terminating contracts without proper investigation or support for affected suppliers could also lead to negative publicity and ethical criticism, potentially contravening principles of responsible business conduct and supply chain management that are becoming increasingly codified in various voluntary and mandatory frameworks. A third incorrect approach that involves overlooking potential red flags in supplier audits due to time pressure would be a failure of due diligence, potentially exposing the company to risks associated with unethical labor practices and contravening the spirit of responsible sourcing initiatives. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the company's ethical commitments and regulatory obligations. This involves gathering comprehensive information, including supplier performance data, audit reports, and potential risks. The next step is to evaluate potential courses of action against these commitments and obligations, considering both short-term and long-term consequences. Collaboration with relevant stakeholders, such as internal sustainability teams and potentially external experts, is crucial. Finally, decisions should be documented and their impact monitored to ensure ongoing compliance and ethical conduct. Question 9. Which approach would be most appropriate for an H&M employee to handle a situation where a close friend arrives during their shift and wishes to make a purchase, but company policy prohibits employees from making personal purchases while on duty? Option A. Suggest the friend wait until the employee's shift has ended or visit the store when a different employee is on duty. Option B. Discreetly allow the friend to make the purchase and avoid mentioning the policy to prevent any awkwardness. Option C. Politely inform the friend about the company policy and explain that personal purchases can only be made during breaks or outside of working hours. Option D. Make an exception for the friend as a personal favor, as it is a one-time occurrence and the item is not of significant value. The correct answer is C. Politely inform the friend about the company policy and explain that personal purchases can only be made during breaks or outside of working hours. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail environments where employees may encounter situations that blur the lines between personal relationships and professional conduct. The core challenge lies in balancing the need to maintain a fair and objective purchasing environment for all customers with the potential for personal relationships to influence decisions. Specifically, the risk of perceived favoritism or unfair advantage can erode customer trust and create an uneven playing field, which is detrimental to H&M's brand reputation and operational integrity. The employee must navigate this delicate situation without causing offense or appearing to be overly strict, while still upholding company policy. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves politely and professionally informing the friend about the company's policy regarding employee purchases during their shift. This upholds best professional practice by prioritizing adherence to established guidelines designed to ensure fairness and prevent conflicts of interest. By clearly communicating the policy, the employee demonstrates integrity and a commitment to H&M's operational standards. This approach respects both the company's rules and the personal relationship by addressing the situation directly and transparently, rather than ignoring it or making an exception. It aligns with ethical principles of impartiality and prevents potential accusations of favoritism. Incorrect approach is analysis. Making an exception for the friend, even if it seems like a small gesture, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It directly violates company policy, which is in place to ensure a consistent and fair customer experience. This action could lead to a perception of favoritism among other customers and employees, undermining trust and potentially creating a precedent for future policy breaches. It also opens the door to conflicts of interest, where personal relationships could influence business decisions. Ignoring the situation and allowing the friend to make the purchase without addressing the policy is also a failure. This passive approach tacitly condones a breach of company rules and demonstrates a lack of accountability. It can lead to the same negative consequences as making an exception, including erosion of trust and potential for future policy violations. It suggests a disregard for the importance of regulatory compliance and ethical conduct within the workplace. Suggesting the friend return at a later time when the employee is not on duty, while seemingly a compromise, still carries risks. It implies that the policy is only relevant when the employee is present, which is unlikely to be the intent of the policy. It could also be interpreted as an attempt to circumvent the policy rather than uphold it, and may still lead to perceptions of preferential treatment if the employee is seen to be facilitating purchases outside of standard operating procedures. Professional reasoning. Professionals in retail environments must develop a decision-making process that prioritizes adherence to company policies and ethical conduct. When faced with a situation involving personal relationships and potential policy conflicts, the first step is to clearly identify the relevant company policy. Next, assess the potential impact of any deviation from that policy on the company, customers, and other employees. A professional should then communicate the policy clearly and respectfully to the individual involved, explaining the rationale behind it if appropriate. If a situation cannot be resolved through direct communication and adherence to policy, seeking guidance from a supervisor or manager is the next crucial step. This ensures that decisions are made with full awareness of company expectations and in a manner that upholds integrity and fairness. Question 10. The review process indicates that while the company has robust systems for tracking financial performance and inventory management, there is a perceived gap in understanding potential future risks that are not immediately quantifiable or evident in past data. This includes subtle shifts in employee sentiment, evolving customer expectations regarding sustainability, and potential reputational damage from social media trends. Which of the following approaches to risk assessment would best address this identified gap? Option A. Implement a structured program of qualitative data gathering through employee focus groups, customer surveys specifically designed to elicit forward-looking feedback, and ongoing monitoring of industry-specific social media sentiment analysis tools. Option B. Increase the frequency of internal audits focused on compliance with current operational procedures. Option C. Rely on the existing financial reporting systems and historical sales data to identify any anomalies that might suggest emerging risks. Option D. Conduct a one-off workshop with senior management to brainstorm potential future risks based on their general industry knowledge. The correct answer is A. Implement a structured program of qualitative data gathering through employee focus groups, customer surveys specifically designed to elicit forward-looking feedback, and ongoing monitoring of industry-specific social media sentiment analysis tools. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for comprehensive risk assessment with the practical constraints of a retail environment. The core difficulty lies in identifying and evaluating risks that are not immediately obvious or quantifiable, such as those related to employee morale, subtle shifts in customer behavior, or emerging ethical concerns. A robust risk assessment requires foresight and a systematic approach to uncover potential threats before they materialize into significant issues. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it advocates for a proactive and multifaceted strategy. It involves not only reviewing historical data and current operational metrics, but also actively seeking qualitative insights from various levels of the organization and external sources. This aligns with regulatory expectations for due diligence and responsible business conduct, which often mandate a forward-looking perspective on potential risks. By incorporating diverse perspectives and considering both tangible and intangible factors, this approach ensures a more complete and accurate understanding of the risk landscape, enabling more effective mitigation strategies. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on quantifiable data or historical incidents fails to capture emerging or subtle risks. This can lead to a false sense of security and leave the business vulnerable to unforeseen challenges. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise due diligence and a lack of commitment to safeguarding the company's reputation and stakeholders' interests. Another incorrect approach that relies heavily on anecdotal evidence without systematic validation risks being subjective and incomplete, potentially overlooking critical systemic issues. This can lead to misallocation of resources and ineffective risk management. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the scope and objectives of the risk assessment. This should be followed by a systematic process of risk identification, considering both internal and external factors, and utilizing a variety of data sources and analytical techniques. Risk evaluation should then prioritize identified risks based on their potential impact and likelihood. Finally, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented, with ongoing monitoring and review to ensure their effectiveness. This structured approach ensures that all relevant aspects of risk are considered and managed effectively. Question 11. The analysis reveals that H&M's internal audit team has identified several potential operational risks related to supply chain disruptions, including delays in raw material sourcing and manufacturing. While all identified risks are documented, the team is debating the most appropriate next step in their risk assessment process. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound and regulatory compliant approach for H&M in the UK context? Option A. Escalate all identified supply chain risks to senior management for immediate decision-making without any prior prioritization or analysis by the audit team. Option B. Immediately implement a broad range of generic risk mitigation measures across all identified supply chain risks to ensure comprehensive coverage. Option C. Focus solely on documenting every potential supply chain disruption scenario without further analysis or action, as the list of potential risks is extensive. Option D. Prioritize the identified supply chain risks based on their potential impact on H&M's financial performance and customer service, and then develop specific, targeted mitigation strategies for the highest priority risks. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the identified supply chain risks based on their potential impact on H&M's financial performance and customer service, and then develop specific, targeted mitigation strategies for the highest priority risks. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a nuanced understanding of risk assessment beyond simple identification. The challenge lies in differentiating between a potential risk and a material risk that warrants immediate and significant mitigation. H&M, as a global retailer, operates within a complex regulatory environment that mandates robust risk management practices to protect its stakeholders, including customers, employees, and investors. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is the UK, and therefore, relevant UK regulations and CISI guidelines are paramount. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic and proportionate response to identified risks. It prioritizes risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to address the most critical threats. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and the requirements of regulatory bodies like the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, and the principles outlined by the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, CISI, for financial professionals. Specifically, a proactive and documented risk assessment process, followed by a tailored mitigation strategy, demonstrates due diligence and adherence to principles of prudence and foresight. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on identifying every conceivable risk without prioritization fails to meet regulatory expectations for effective risk management. It can lead to resource misallocation and a dilution of focus on genuinely significant threats. This approach lacks the analytical rigor required by UK regulations, which emphasize a risk-based approach to compliance and operational management. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing a generic, one-size-fits-all mitigation strategy for all identified risks is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the specific nature and potential impact of different risks. It can lead to ineffective controls, unnecessary costs, and a failure to adequately address the most pressing issues, potentially breaching the duty of care expected under UK law and CISI ethical standards. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This typically includes 1. Risk identification, brainstorming and documenting all potential risks. 2. Risk analysis, evaluating the likelihood and potential impact of each identified risk. 3. Risk evaluation, prioritizing risks based on their significance. 4. Risk treatment, developing and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies. 5. Risk monitoring and review, regularly assessing the effectiveness of controls and updating the risk assessment as circumstances change. This systematic process ensures that risk management is integrated into the business strategy and operational decision-making, aligning with regulatory requirements and ethical obligations. Question 12. The monitoring system demonstrates a recurring pattern of transactions that, while individually within acceptable thresholds, collectively suggest a potential deviation from established internal trading policies. What is the most appropriate next step for the compliance team? Option A. Classify the pattern as a minor anomaly and close the alert, assuming it does not represent a significant risk. Option B. Immediately report the pattern to senior management and the relevant regulatory body, requesting guidance on how to proceed. Option C. Initiate a detailed review of the flagged transactions, gathering additional data and context to understand the underlying activity and its compliance implications. Option D. Implement a blanket restriction on all similar transactions across the organization until the pattern can be fully understood. The correct answer is C. Initiate a detailed review of the flagged transactions, gathering additional data and context to understand the underlying activity and its compliance implications. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for proactive risk identification with the potential for overregulation or unnecessary intervention. The monitoring system has flagged a pattern that could indicate a breach of internal policy or even regulatory noncompliance, but the exact nature and severity are not immediately clear. Professionals must exercise sound judgment to determine the appropriate level of response without causing undue disruption or missing a critical issue. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, evidence-based investigation. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that actions are proportionate to the identified risk. It adheres to principles of due diligence and responsible oversight, which are fundamental in maintaining regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. By gathering more information and assessing the context, professionals can make an informed decision, minimizing the risk of both false positives and missed violations. This methodical approach is crucial for demonstrating a commitment to robust internal controls and a proactive stance on risk management. As expected by regulatory bodies and internal governance frameworks, incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediate escalation to senior management or external regulators without further investigation. This fails to demonstrate due diligence and can lead to unnecessary alarm, wasted resources, and potential reputational damage if the flagged activity turns out to be benign or a misunderstanding. It bypasses the professional responsibility to gather facts and assess the situation before triggering formal processes. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the alert as a minor anomaly without any further review. This represents a significant failure in risk management and oversight. It could lead to the overlooking of serious policy breaches or regulatory violations, exposing the company to significant financial penalties, legal repercussions, and reputational harm. It demonstrates a lack of commitment to maintaining a compliant and ethical operating environment. A third incorrect approach is to implement broad, sweeping policy changes based solely on the initial alert, without understanding the root cause. This is an inefficient and potentially counterproductive response. It can create unnecessary burdens for employees, disrupt legitimate business activities, and fail to address the actual underlying issue, leaving the company vulnerable to future occurrences. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a tiered approach to investigating flagged activities. This involves initial data review, followed by targeted information gathering, contextual analysis, and then, if necessary, escalation or implementation of corrective actions. This process ensures that responses are proportionate, evidence-based, and aligned with regulatory expectations and ethical standards. The goal is to achieve effective risk mitigation while maintaining operational efficiency and a culture of compliance. Question 13. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a key strategic decision regarding a new product line launch requires an understanding of current customer purchasing patterns for similar items. A senior manager requests immediate access to detailed customer purchase histories to inform this decision. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and compliant course of action? Option A. Immediately grant the senior manager access to the full customer purchase history database, as the strategic decision is time-sensitive and requires comprehensive data. Option B. Provide a high-level, anecdotal overview of general customer preferences based on existing market research and publicly available information, without accessing any specific customer purchase data. Option C. Inform the senior manager that accessing detailed customer purchase histories is not possible due to privacy concerns, and suggest they proceed with the decision based on intuition and general market knowledge. Option D. Consult the H&M Group's data protection policy and relevant privacy regulations to determine the lawful basis for accessing customer data. Seek appropriate authorization for a limited and anonymized data extract if necessary, and ensure the data is used solely for the specified purpose. Correct answer is D. Consult the H&M Group's data protection policy and relevant privacy regulations to determine the lawful basis for accessing customer data. Seek appropriate authorization for a limited and anonymized data extract if necessary, and ensure the data is used solely for the specified purpose. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect customer data and maintain confidentiality. The pressure to provide a quick response to a potentially significant business decision can lead to shortcuts that compromise these principles. Careful judgment is required to navigate the competing demands of business urgency and data privacy. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the H&M Group's data protection policy and relevant data privacy regulations, such as the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, if applicable to the context of the assessment. This approach ensures that any access to or use of customer data is lawful, fair, and transparent. It involves a structured process of identifying the legitimate business need, assessing the necessity and proportionality of accessing the data, obtaining appropriate authorization, and ensuring that the data is handled securely and only for the specified purpose. This upholds customer trust and avoids potential legal and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that involves directly accessing and analyzing customer purchase history without a clear, authorized purpose, or without considering the privacy implications would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could violate data protection principles, such as purpose limitation and data minimization, and breach customer expectations of privacy. Another incorrect approach, such as providing a generalized overview of customer trends without specific data access, might seem like a safe alternative but could be misleading or insufficient if the business decision truly hinges on specific, albeit anonymized, data insights. This fails to meet the business need effectively, while still potentially overstepping boundaries if the generalized overview is derived from sensitive, non-public information. A third incorrect approach, delaying the response indefinitely due to fear of data misuse, would be a failure in professional responsibility to support business decision-making, even if it avoids data privacy risks. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the precise business question. They should then identify the data required to answer it, assess the privacy implications of accessing that data, consult relevant internal policies and external regulations, seek appropriate authorization for data access, and ensure secure and compliant data handling. If there is any doubt, seeking guidance from legal or data privacy teams is paramount. Question 14. During the evaluation of a new inventory management system implementation at H&M, a key concern arises regarding the potential for data migration errors and the impact on financial reporting accuracy. The project team is considering different strategies for rolling out the new system. Which of the following approaches best balances operational efficiency with regulatory compliance and data integrity? Option A. Implement the new system across all stores simultaneously after a single round of user acceptance testing, with a contingency plan for immediate rollback if major issues arise. Option B. Prioritize speed of deployment by migrating all data at once, assuming that any minor data discrepancies can be corrected post-launch through manual adjustments. Option C. Proceed with the data migration without extensive involvement from the IT security team, focusing primarily on the functional aspects of the new inventory system. Option D. Conduct a phased rollout, migrating data and systems section by section, with rigorous data validation checks and reconciliation processes at each stage, and a dedicated support team for user training and issue resolution. The correct answer is A. Implement the new system across all stores simultaneously after a single round of user acceptance testing, with a contingency plan for immediate rollback if major issues arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The implementation of a new inventory management system, while intended to streamline processes, introduces a risk of data corruption or loss if not handled with meticulous attention to detail and adherence to established protocols. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the transition does not compromise the accuracy of financial records or violate any data protection regulations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, controlled rollout with robust validation at each stage. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and risk management, ensuring that any potential issues are identified and rectified before they impact critical business operations or financial reporting. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to data accuracy, which is fundamental to financial statements and regulatory filings. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of significant financial misstatements or breaches of data privacy, which could lead to regulatory penalties and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that involves a big bang implementation without adequate testing or rollback plans is professionally unacceptable. This would represent a failure to conduct proper due diligence and risk assessment, potentially leading to widespread data errors that could take considerable time and resources to correct. Such an approach could also violate data integrity requirements stipulated by financial reporting standards and data protection laws, as inaccurate data could lead to misrepresentation in financial statements or unauthorized access/disclosure of personal information. Another incorrect approach, which is to proceed with the implementation without involving the IT security team, is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This overlooks the critical role of IT security in safeguarding sensitive company and customer data. Failure to involve IT security could result in vulnerabilities being introduced into the system, increasing the risk of data breaches, which would contravene data protection regulations and potentially lead to severe legal and financial repercussions. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on the technical aspects of the migration, neglecting the training and support needs of the end users, is also professionally deficient. While technical success is important, user adoption and proficiency are crucial for the system's overall effectiveness. Neglecting user training can lead to operational inefficiencies, errors, and frustration, indirectly impacting data quality, and potentially leading to non-compliance if users bypass proper procedures due to lack of understanding. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive risk assessment, stakeholder consultation, including IT, legal, and operational departments, a detailed project plan with clear milestones and validation points, and a robust change management strategy that includes user training and support. Prioritizing compliance and data integrity throughout the implementation lifecycle is paramount. Question 15. Stakeholder feedback indicates a potential discrepancy in the reporting of inventory valuation for a specific product line, suggesting it might be overstated. The feedback comes from a key supplier who has expressed concern about the accuracy of the figures provided in recent financial statements. Option A. Initiate an immediate internal audit of the inventory valuation process for the product line in question, involving the finance and operations departments, to verify the supplier's concerns and gather all necessary documentation before responding to the supplier. Option B. Publicly acknowledge the supplier's concern and immediately adjust the inventory valuation downwards in the next financial report to demonstrate responsiveness to stakeholder feedback. Option C. Inform the supplier that their feedback is noted, but that the company's internal processes are robust and that no further investigation is warranted at this time. Option D. Escalate the feedback to the marketing department to assess the potential impact on sales and marketing strategies, without directly investigating the financial reporting accuracy. The correct answer is A. Initiate an immediate internal audit of the inventory valuation process for the product line in question, involving the finance and operations departments, to verify the supplier's concerns and gather all necessary documentation before responding to the supplier. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a desire to maintain positive stakeholder relationships and the obligation to uphold ethical standards and regulatory compliance. The pressure to address feedback quickly, even if it means overlooking potential issues, can lead to compromised decision-making. Careful judgment is required to balance responsiveness with integrity. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, objective investigation before making any commitments or decisions. This aligns with the ethical principle of due diligence and the regulatory expectation that financial advice and actions are based on accurate information and a comprehensive understanding of the situation. By gathering all relevant facts and consulting with appropriate internal resources, the professional ensures that any subsequent actions are informed, defensible, and in the best interest of all parties, thereby avoiding potential misrepresentation or breaches of trust. An incorrect approach that involves immediately agreeing to the stakeholder's request without verification fails to uphold the duty of care. This could lead to actions that are not in the best interest of the company or other stakeholders, potentially violating internal policies or even broader regulatory requirements related to financial integrity and responsible business conduct. It demonstrates a lack of professional skepticism and an abdication of responsibility for due diligence. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the feedback outright without investigation, is professionally unacceptable as it disregards the importance of stakeholder input and can damage trust and reputation. It also risks missing critical information that could prevent future problems or identify opportunities for improvement. Ethically, it shows a lack of respect for those providing feedback and fails to foster a culture of open communication and continuous improvement. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, acknowledge and appreciate the feedback received. Second, assess the nature and potential impact of the feedback to determine the appropriate level of investigation. Third, gather all relevant facts and data objectively, consulting with subject matter experts or relevant departments as needed. Fourth, analyze the findings to identify any discrepancies, risks, or opportunities. Fifth, develop a reasoned course of action based on the analysis, ensuring it aligns with ethical principles, company policies, and regulatory obligations. Finally, communicate the findings and the proposed actions clearly and transparently to the relevant stakeholders. Question 16. Governance review demonstrates that a significant number of customer complaints have been received regarding a specific garment's potential to cause skin irritation. While the immediate financial impact of a recall or product modification would be substantial, the compliance department has flagged that the current product labeling may not fully disclose all potential allergenic materials used in its production, potentially contravening consumer goods regulations. A senior manager is pressuring the product team to downplay the issue to avoid negative press and meet quarterly sales targets. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Advise the senior manager that the sales targets are secondary to regulatory compliance and customer safety, and propose a plan to address the customer complaints and labeling concerns proactively, even if it impacts short-term financial performance. Option B. Instruct the product team to conduct a superficial review of the complaints, focusing only on identifying any potential manufacturing defects rather than the inherent material properties or labeling adequacy, and report back with findings that support continuing sales. Option C. Immediately halt production and distribution of the garment. Initiate a comprehensive investigation into the reported skin irritations and labeling accuracy, and escalate the findings to the legal and compliance departments for immediate action and potential customer notification. Option D. Continue sales of the garment while discreetly updating the product labeling in future production runs and offering a small, undisclosed discount on future purchases to customers who complain. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt production and distribution of the garment. Initiate a comprehensive investigation into the reported skin irritations and labeling accuracy, and escalate the findings to the legal and compliance departments for immediate action and potential customer notification. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial pressures of a business with the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning product safety and customer well-being. The pressure to meet sales targets and avoid negative publicity can create a conflict of interest, tempting individuals to overlook or downplay potential risks. Careful judgment is required to prioritize ethical conduct and regulatory compliance over short-term gains. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes customer safety and regulatory adherence above all else. By immediately escalating the issue to the relevant internal departments, legal, compliance, product development, and initiating a thorough investigation, the individual demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and responsible corporate behavior. This aligns with the fundamental principles of consumer protection and the regulatory framework that mandates businesses to ensure their products are safe and meet all applicable standards. Proactive disclosure and remediation, even if costly, are essential for maintaining customer trust and avoiding more severe legal and reputational damage in the long run. An incorrect approach that involves delaying the reporting of the issue to assess the full impact before informing relevant departments is ethically flawed and potentially illegal. This delay could be construed as an attempt to conceal a product defect, which violates principles of transparency and honesty. It also risks further harm to consumers if the product is indeed unsafe, leading to potential legal liabilities and severe reputational damage for H&M. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the customer's complaint as an isolated incident without proper investigation, demonstrates a disregard for customer feedback and a failure to uphold due diligence. Negligence can have serious consequences if the complaint points to a systemic issue. It fails to meet the ethical obligation to take customer concerns seriously, and the regulatory requirement to ensure product quality and safety. Finally, an incorrect approach that involves offering a small, undisclosed discount on future purchases without addressing the core safety concern is a superficial attempt to placate the customer while avoiding responsibility. This is ethically deceptive and fails to comply with regulations that require addressing product defects and ensuring customer safety. It prioritizes a minimal financial outlay over genuine resolution and customer well-being. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying potential ethical and regulatory conflicts. This involves understanding the relevant laws, company policies, and ethical codes of conduct. When faced with a dilemma, the next step is to gather all relevant facts objectively, considering the perspectives of all stakeholders, especially customers. The professional should then evaluate potential courses of action against ethical principles and regulatory requirements, prioritizing actions that uphold integrity, transparency, and the well-being of others. Escalation to appropriate internal channels for guidance and decision-making is crucial when the situation involves significant risk or complexity. Question 17. Regulatory review indicates that H&M's hiring policies emphasize fairness, objectivity, and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. A hiring manager discovers that one of the candidates being interviewed for a vacant position is a close personal friend with whom they have a long-standing relationship. The hiring manager believes they can still conduct a fair interview and make an objective assessment, but acknowledges the personal connection. What is the most appropriate course of action for the hiring manager in this situation? Option A. Proceed with the interview and evaluation, confident in their ability to remain objective and fair despite the personal relationship. Option B. Disclose the personal relationship to human resources and recuse themselves from the evaluation and decision-making process for this specific candidate. Option C. Discreetly try to ensure the friend is hired, believing their personal knowledge of the candidate's character makes them the best judge. Option D. Avoid interviewing the friend altogether and assign the interview to another colleague without explanation. The correct answer is B. Disclose the personal relationship to human resources and recuse themselves from the evaluation and decision-making process for this specific candidate. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a personal relationship and the duty of impartiality and fairness expected in a hiring process. The hiring manager is tasked with making an objective assessment of candidates, but their personal connection to one candidate creates a risk of bias, either conscious or unconscious. This bias could lead to an unfair evaluation of all candidates, potentially resulting in the selection of a less qualified individual or the rejection of a more suitable one. Maintaining the integrity of the hiring process and upholding H&M's commitment to equal opportunity are paramount. The correct approach, which involves disclosing the personal relationship to HR and recusing oneself from the decision-making process for that specific candidate, represents best professional practice. This aligns with ethical principles of transparency, fairness, and conflict of interest management. By disclosing the relationship, the hiring manager demonstrates integrity and a commitment to avoiding even the appearance of impropriety. Recusing oneself ensures that the candidate's evaluation is conducted by individuals without a personal stake, thereby safeguarding the objectivity and fairness of the hiring decision. This practice is often reinforced by company policies and general ethical guidelines in professional settings, aiming to prevent undue influence and ensure merit-based selection. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the evaluation without disclosure. Attempting to be fair, despite the personal connection, fails to acknowledge the potential for unconscious bias and violates the principle of transparency. It creates a situation where the integrity of the hiring process is compromised, and if discovered, could lead to reputational damage for both the individual and H&M. Another incorrect approach would be to favor the personal acquaintance, consciously or unconsciously, leading to an unfair advantage and a breach of meritocratic principles. This is a direct violation of ethical hiring practices and could result in legal challenges related to discrimination. Finally, attempting to subtly disadvantage the acquaintance to prove impartiality is also an unethical approach, as it still involves personal bias influencing the decision-making process, albeit in a different direction. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of company policies regarding conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. When a potential conflict arises, the first step is to identify it. This is followed by assessing the severity of the conflict and its potential impact on the decision-making process. The next crucial step is to consult relevant policies and, if necessary, seek guidance from HR or a supervisor. Transparency and proactive disclosure are key. If a conflict is identified, the professional should consider options for mitigation, which often includes recusal from the specific decision or task. The overarching principle is to prioritize fairness, objectivity, and the integrity of the organization's processes. Question 18. Quality control measures reveal that a batch of new season garments, intended for a critical upcoming promotional launch, has a minor but noticeable stitching flaw in approximately 5% of the items. The production team is under immense pressure to meet the launch deadline and has indicated that rectifying the flaw across the entire batch would significantly delay the launch and increase production costs beyond the allocated budget. The marketing department is concerned about the impact of any delay on sales targets. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Proceed with the launch as scheduled, but implement a rigorous post-launch inspection process and be prepared to offer immediate customer service resolutions for any affected items. Option B. Halt the launch of this specific garment line until the stitching flaw can be completely rectified in all affected items, and communicate the delay transparently to all stakeholders. Option C. Expedite the launch with the flawed items and instruct the sales staff to offer a small, unadvertised discount to customers who notice and mention the stitching issue. Option D. Release the garments with the stitching flaw, but subtly adjust the product descriptions online to indicate that minor variations in stitching are to be expected due to the manufacturing process. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the launch as scheduled, but implement a rigorous post-launch inspection process and be prepared to offer immediate customer service resolutions for any affected items. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between immediate cost-saving pressures and the long-term implications of product quality and brand reputation. Pressure to meet a tight deadline and reduce expenses can tempt individuals to overlook or minimize quality issues. However, ethical and professional standards, particularly within a retail environment like H&M, demand a commitment to delivering safe and reliable products to consumers. The correct approach involves prioritizing product integrity and consumer safety above short-term financial gains. This aligns with ethical principles of honesty, integrity, and responsibility. Specifically, it upholds the implicit promise to customers that products sold meet acceptable quality standards and are safe for use. This proactive stance prevents potential harm to consumers, avoids costly product recalls, protects the brand's reputation, and maintains customer trust, which are all critical for long-term business success. An incorrect approach that involves accepting the slightly defective items to meet the deadline would be ethically unsound and potentially violate consumer protection regulations. This failure to uphold quality standards erodes customer trust and could lead to significant reputational damage and financial penalties if the defects are discovered by consumers or regulatory bodies. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay the launch without a clear plan or communication, demonstrates poor risk management and a lack of decisive leadership. While addressing the quality issue is paramount, a complete halt without a strategy for resolution can also negatively impact business operations and stakeholder confidence. A third incorrect approach, which is to try and subtly alter the product description to downplay the defect, is dishonest and deceptive, directly violating ethical codes of conduct and potentially consumer law. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core ethical and professional obligations. This involves assessing the potential impact of each course of action on all stakeholders, including customers, the company, and employees. When faced with a conflict between immediate pressures and long-term integrity, the framework should guide towards solutions that uphold ethical standards and regulatory compliance, even if they require more effort or resources in the short term. This often involves transparent communication with relevant parties, seeking expert advice, and developing a robust plan to rectify the issue while minimizing negative consequences. Question 19. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive approach to process optimization within H&M's operations. considering the need to enhance efficiency while maintaining customer satisfaction and employee well-being. Which of the following strategies best exemplifies a responsible and effective method for process improvement? Option A. Implementing a new inventory management system that automates stock checks and reordering, with a focus on reducing manual labor and speeding up replenishment cycles, after a pilot phase in a select number of stores to assess its impact on operational efficiency and staff workload. Option B. Adopting a new technology solution for visual merchandising that requires minimal staff input, regardless of whether it aligns with H&M's brand aesthetic or the ability of staff to effectively utilize and maintain it. Option C. Immediately rolling out a new customer service script across all stores designed to shorten transaction times, even if it means limiting staff interaction and potentially frustrating customers seeking personalized assistance. Option D. Introducing a blanket policy of reducing staff hours in all departments to cut labor costs, without analyzing specific departmental needs or the impact on service delivery and employee morale. The correct answer is A. Implementing a new inventory management system that automates stock checks and reordering, with a focus on reducing manual labor and speeding up replenishment cycles, after a pilot phase in a select number of stores to assess its impact on operational efficiency and staff workload. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations, balancing efficiency gains with potential impacts on customer experience and employee well-being. The professional challenge lies in identifying process optimization strategies that align with H&M's brand values and regulatory obligations, particularly concerning fair labor practices and customer service standards. A hasty implementation without considering these factors can lead to unintended negative consequences, such as decreased employee morale, increased customer complaints, and potential breaches of employment law or consumer protection guidelines. The correct approach focuses on a holistic and data-driven method to process optimization. It involves a thorough analysis of current processes, identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies, and then developing solutions that consider the impact on all stakeholders. This includes engaging employees in the process, as they often have valuable insights into operational challenges and potential solutions. Furthermore, it necessitates piloting changes and measuring their effectiveness before full-scale implementation, ensuring that the optimized processes are sustainable and achieve the desired outcomes without compromising quality or compliance. This aligns with best professional practice by promoting continuous improvement, fostering a positive work environment, and ensuring adherence to any relevant employment or consumer regulations that might govern service delivery and working conditions. An incorrect approach that prioritizes cost reduction above all else, without considering the impact on customer service or employee workload, is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a decline in customer satisfaction, potentially violating consumer protection principles if service levels are significantly degraded. It also risks creating an environment of excessive pressure on employees, which could lead to burnout and potentially contravene employment laws related to working hours, rest breaks, and fair treatment. Another incorrect approach might involve adopting a one-size-fits-all solution without tailoring it to specific store needs or customer demographics. This fails to acknowledge the diverse operational realities within a retail chain and can lead to inefficient or even detrimental outcomes in certain locations, potentially impacting sales and brand reputation. Professionals should approach process optimization by first defining clear objectives that encompass not only efficiency, but also customer satisfaction and employee well-being. This involves a diagnostic phase to understand current performance, followed by a design phase where potential solutions are brainstormed and evaluated for their impact. Pilot testing and iterative refinement are crucial steps to ensure successful adoption. Finally, ongoing monitoring and evaluation are necessary to sustain improvements and adapt to changing circumstances, always within the bounds of ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. Question 20. Implementation of a new inventory management system to improve stock accuracy and reduce manual counting errors. Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the existing inventory process, involving store staff in identifying pain points and potential solutions, and pilot the new system in a few select stores before a full rollout. Option B. Implement the new system by focusing solely on the technological aspects, without providing extensive training or gathering feedback from store employees. Option C. Reduce the number of staff responsible for inventory management to offset the cost of the new system, assuming the technology will compensate for the reduced human oversight. Option D. Immediately replace the old system with the new one across all stores, assuming staff will adapt quickly to the changes. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the existing inventory process, involving store staff in identifying pain points and potential solutions, and pilot the new system in a few select stores before a full rollout. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations, balancing efficiency gains with maintaining customer experience and compliance. Professional challenge lies in identifying process improvements that are not only cost-effective, but also align with H&M's brand values and regulatory obligations, particularly concerning data handling and employee well-being. Careful judgment is required to avoid unintended negative consequences. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic review of the entire customer journey and operational workflow. This involves actively seeking input from frontline staff, who possess invaluable insights into daily challenges and potential bottlenecks. By focusing on data-driven insights and pilot testing, it ensures that proposed changes are effective, scalable, and minimize disruption. This aligns with ethical considerations of employee engagement and responsible business practices, ensuring that efficiency does not come at the expense of staff morale or customer satisfaction. Furthermore, any process changes must implicitly consider data privacy regulations, ensuring that customer information is handled securely and ethically throughout any optimized process. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing staffing levels without considering the impact on customer service or workload distribution is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to longer wait times, decreased customer satisfaction, and increased stress on remaining employees, potentially violating implied service level agreements and negatively impacting brand reputation. Another incorrect approach that implements technology without adequate staff training or consideration for user experience creates inefficiencies and frustration, failing to achieve the intended optimization and potentially leading to errors or data breaches if not properly managed. A third incorrect approach that bypasses employee consultation and imposes changes unilaterally disregards the ethical imperative of fair treatment and consultation with staff, which can lead to resistance, decreased productivity, and a breakdown in trust. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the problem and desired outcomes. This should be followed by a thorough analysis of current processes involving stakeholder consultation, including frontline staff. Potential solutions should then be evaluated based on their feasibility, impact on customer experience, employee well-being, and regulatory compliance. Pilot testing and continuous monitoring are crucial to ensure successful implementation and to make necessary adjustments.